Focused on quality and convenience, there isn't much you won't find at Marie's Mini Mart. Home-style breads, sandwiches, plus a variety of artisan breads and delicious single-serve desserts available exclusively at our Frecker Drive location. Marie's Mini Mart, with 25 locations wherever you go, there we are.
Welcome to Sharing Our Cultures. This is the place where you get to meet amazing individuals from diverse cultural backgrounds who are making significant contributions to the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. Joining me in conversation today is Rita Ujunwa Onah, and she's a PhD candidate in the Department of Archaeology at Memorial University. Welcome back to Sharing Our Cultures. Joining us now in conversation is Rita Ujunwa Onah. Welcome to Sharing Our Cultures.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you are a PhD candidate here at the Department of Archaeology.
Yes,
Yeah,
I am.
you're great. Well, congratulations on that work.
Thank you.
Yeah. So how did you come to choose this province as a place to study?
Okay, well, I'm a lecturer in the University of Nigeria. So as I was concluding my master's there, I started thinking of what to study further for my PhD. So trying to develop ideas or things that are coming to me. So I stumbled on this article, ResearchGate, and what I actually did in my master's is something about impact assessment in indigenous community, cultural impact assessment. So I was trying to continue on indigenous study, but don't really know the exact thing to do. So when I stumbled on this article about indigenous community in Canada, that is the Inuit, the Inuit of Labrador. So I really don't know who they are, what they are, or wherever they are, but like the article really spoke a lot to me about what I am interested in, about indigenous people, the resistant factor, how they survived everything they went through, the complex structure, the colonialism, the contact period, a lot. And that was very similar to the indigenous Igbo community that I've been studying for years. So I was like, who are these people? Where are they? They're like us, you know? So, and then I decided to contact the author. So I contacted the author, that is Dr. Lisa Rankin. So we started talking and we started sharing ideas, started telling her what you write. And these people, I'm really interested in them and look at what I'm doing already. So I'm actually thinking of starting these people too, just a cross approach, you know?
Right.
So, and she was really interested. And she was really very, very encouraging and interested in my passion and what I want to do. So we spoke for like up to 2 years, you know, yeah, before, you know, the idea came out, the main thing came out. So then I asked her, I want to do this for my PhD. And she was really interested and she said, yes, you can come in. So, and I began the application. So I don't know, I didn't know where I was Newfoundland, or I've not been to Canada before, you know. So, and that was it. So I got admitted and my project got funded. So I moved. I got here.
Congratulations.
Thank you
That's
so
quite
much.
a process to get here.
Yeah.
Right. So tell us a little bit more about the focus of your research then.
Okay. So my research is focused on indigenous resilience. That is the resilience of indigenous people. So as an archaeologist, I'm trying to understand why these people survived. Why are they resilient? They are not just the indigenous people in Canada or in Africa. Like I'm doing the Igbo resilience and the Inuit resilience. So in as much as I find the similarity in both cultures, but there are other people that had the similarity, but they didn't survive. They are not thriving today. So my research is trying to understand why they are thriving. What factor played in during the contact period? How did they go about colonialism? The complex structure of colonialism? What happened? How did they resist the system? How are they still thriving? Why are they still connected to their land? And why is this people still trying to get their voice back, to own their land? You know, it's a process, but I think my research is actually focusing on indigenous agency, the agency of an indigenous person, right? So, and that's connected to the resilience. So, so it's their agency that made them resilient and thriving today. So,
okay. So you've been able to identify this both in the Igbos and in the Inuit?
yes.
Okay. So what else have you been able to find out that has contributed to this resilience in addition to the agency? What is it about them and about that agency?
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for that question, because that's just the general compound of the agency. So this culture, the people, actually existed before colonialism. They existed before any contact with a stranger, an external person that is not indigenous to the land. So they survived the hard weather or whatever. They had their own mind. They developed their own technology. They had their own ways of documentation. They had their own way of history making, their own scientific knowledge, their own formal education, their own civilization in general. So, and they were understanding each other. They had their communal life. They had their religion. They had their everything. Probably the traditional medical system and everything. So when this colonialism came, they were trying to, colonialism at some point is trying to hide these factors that these people had and was using to exist at this particular time, trying to impose a lot of new things to them. So what I found out is that these people resisted some acts of colonialism that want to dominate their being. Something like their belief system, which is always connected to their land. Their practice, their communal living, their food, their festival, their livelihood, everything is actually connected to their land and is connected to their person. So, and this is the same thing with the Igbos. So they had their like for the Igbos, they had their Igbo. The Inuit had their shamanism. Then they had their food, their own food, and which had different practices associated with the making of their food. The Inuit had the caribou system and what they ate that made them survive. The Igbos had their G and all the performances that goes about the yam. That's the G. So, and also, when the Inuit, they were trying to survive in their sod houses and every other thing that made them to develop their own material, they were changing according to the weather. So some of them were building sod houses, some of them were using something to heat it up, some of them were using, they had their own architectural design, right? So the same thing with the Igbos. The Igbos, some of them lived in clay huts. They were changing structures. So all these things were just indigenous to them. They don't have to meet a colonial architecture to tell them how to get their huts heated up or their sod houses heated up, you know. So all these things are cultural aspects that are embedded in them, and it never went away. It was still there. It's still there now. So when people say, oh, these people were uneducated, they were uncivilized and all that, you say, no, they were. They had their own ways of history making. They had their own ways of survival. They had their pattern already on the way. You just came to meet already existing people. You didn't discover them.
Right. Yes, that's a key word
Yes.
there, you know.
Yes.
They were already existed.
Yes.
But we've read a lot of history books that said either Africans had no history or, you know, when colonialism became the norm and people were forced into that way of life, all of these were the narratives used to justify the fact that...
Definitely. You can even link that to the word of Chimamanda Adichie, who said, I was Igbo before the white man came. So these people were indigenous before any contact period, before any exchange of words with a stranger, exchange of material. They already had their being, they already had their way of survival before they met anybody. At some point, I actually feel that people that write on the history book, I discovered these people were wanderers. Maybe they just missed their way and found themselves in a strange land and, you know, and told the story, told their own story.
Right.
So we, at some point, my research is actually trying to tell the story from an indigenous perspective.
Right.
Let's hear the voice of an indigenous person. It has been the voice of the colonial or a colonial influenced person all this while. So let those indigenous people speak. Let them say how they felt about all this period and how they want to be represented.
Right. And they can represent themselves
Yes.
very well.
Yes.
Okay. So you've been able to find some comparisons between the artifacts of the Inuit as well as the Igbo.
Yes.
And you've brought one with you today, so we're going to take a look at it.
Okay.
So together we're going to unveil it.
All right.
Wow. Look at that.
Okay.
I'll let you. Okay.
All right.
Okay, you can probably hold it up.
Okay.
so
This
the
is a
camera.
mass.
Okay.
Can you see?
Yeah, yes, I can see it. Yes.
Okay. This is from the Igbo cultural setting, and it's actually from ethnographic collection. So it's made of wood, and this is just textile and some things that were put into it. So just like what I said about history, ways of documentation and ways of history making, the Igbo people made these designs out of their culture. All those designs means things and tell stories of an Igbo person. The styles, the carvings, the motifs, all these things that form an aesthetic value, but they tell a story. So this is kind of a replica of an ancestor. When they have kind of a masquerade festival or a festival that has to represent, they're trying to represent a spirit. So it's kind of in communication with the ancestors. So this is something like someone wears and tries to represent the spirit, like they'll start calling the person more, they'll start calling you spirit, you know? And there are some other custom and traditional values that are attached to wearing this. It's not just anybody that wears it. Some of them are already introduced into the masquerade cult or perform some traditional rites before you can just put this on. So, and this has to represent a particular type of spirit because there are different spirits. There's one that represents the women or the femininity. There's one that represents the men and the cultural value. There's one that represents the market square, that represent maybe the yam festival or animals, you know, a lot of stories that the Igbos have and they want to tell through all these cultural practices. So in this kind of this, the masquerade festival at some point it's like an intangible heritage factor because it continues.
Okay.
But there are some, but this kind of artifact is what they use to represent it to me. It's not going to die off, that their ancestors lives among them, and they're still trying to communicate with them and do some stuff. So this is kind of a face of an ancestor. So this is incisions by the side. This is the brow, the eye. We already see all those marks represent something. Then these textiles and then the knittings, all those things was done indigenously. Nothing was sewn. It was done bare hands. And to this artifact, there is still the body costume used on it, and it was sewn with bare hands. They just do knitting. And that knitting process is still in vogue now, the Quaicoe fabric. They're still doing it in indigenous setting. So these people wore clothes before importing clothes. So that's the idea I'm trying to recreate by bringing this. And we can still link this to how Halloween is celebrated here. Okay. We are still trying to have that connection with the ancestor, with the dead. We see some Halloween costumes having something scary, something like masks, something like, all these things are linked together.
Yeah. But it was part of the indigenous culture very early on.
Yes.
The beginning of time.
Yeah, pre-colonial times.
Pre-colonial
Yeah.
times, yeah.
So
Is there any way of dating this?
yes, currently that's actually what I'm analyzing in the lab.
Okay.
So probably when I finish, I should have a date.
Okay.
So yeah, but I got some artifacts just like this with other things like metals, other fabrics, pottery, hand axe, yeah, and other interesting things from Nigeria shipped here.
Okay.
So I'm actually working on them. Probably should have a date for them.
Okay, all right, that would be great.
Yeah.
And I know then that there's some Inuit artifacts that are similar, and we'll probably get an opportunity to talk more about that or see some visuals and be able to take a look at them together.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, well, this is fascinating as it is.
Yeah.
We will take a short break and we will come back
Okay.
and chat some more about your work and your other interests in our community here.
Thank you.
Sharing Our Cultures will be right back. Don't go away, because you sure want to find out what Rita has to say. Welcome back to Sharing Our Cultures, and we're continuing our conversation with Rita. She's a PhD candidate in the Department of Archaeology at Memorial University. Now, Rita, I'm really interested about your research and your study, and tell us a little bit about what's your theoretical framework for this doctoral work?
Okay, using resiliency theory, and it's all about, it's linked to agency theory too. So resiliency theory is all about trying to define a particular culture or a particular people that resisted a complex structure. So linking it to what I'm doing, I'm trying to understand from the contact period to the colonialism and to the post-colonialism. There was an act of resilience on these indigenous communities. They faced hardship. They survived complex structures of colonialism and contact and oppression and destruction. Post-colonialism, they are trying to own their voice. They are trying to reclaim who they are, their identity. So at this stage, these people are still resilient. They didn't die off. They still resisted the fact to be suppressed, to be forgotten, to die off. So that's the underpinning issue about my study. And all these things are, all these people, this idea of being resilient is embedded in their agency, their being, who they are. Because each object they used had what they had in mind to do it. They had something in mind to produce it. They had what they wanted to use it for, why they produced it, and all other factors that are related to producing it. So, and that is why they didn't, he can't just die off, because it's in them. Okay. It's who they are. Yeah.
Even though these structures, for example, the residential schools or teaching the colonialist language, that was so much a part of what they had to endure?
Yes, yes, their language, some of them, their names, we can see some in naming. You know, some places we are taken over by the colonialist language and colonialist naming. They name you according to the name, the field, the feet. They name a place according to what they think fits, not really what the indigenous people think. So it might be the language of the colonialist, not the language of an indigenous person. And some of these people, like for the Igbos, when during colonialism, it was said that everybody should be speaking English. Like me, I grew up trying to be like an Englishman. You know, growing up in a university environment, everybody was speaking English, answering English name. Like my parents have to give us names after saints. You know, they gave you Rita. You have to be an English person. You know, nothing about our identity was actually promoted. Just like what Chinua Achebe said, they taught us what they know, not what they think we need to know.
Because that's the whole theory around post-colonial theory, is that we want to go back and say, this is what we were before, this is how we dressed, this is what we spoke, and this is how we lived. And in mentioning that, so much has already influenced how it is for us today.
Yes.
Right? In terms of, I know your other area of passion is equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism.
Okay.
Because we're still fighting some of those structures, right? To be able to identify who we want to be and who we want to be in terms of language, in terms of what we find is important and of value to us. So tell us a little bit more about your involvement in the EDIR.
Okay, EDIAR is actually something that I'm hopeful for. Like, it gives me hope being here and also being an indigenous person and also doing indigenous archaeology. So I would say, coming from a personal experience, there is a lot I expected to meet. I expected to be in place before I arrive here, or maybe this is how I think here is. But probably when I came and how the structures are, I wasn't feeling it. For instance, I'm the only black in my department. And probably I remember the first time I came, I went upstairs, downstairs, and I was like, I think I'm the only one. You know, that feeling. Then you might not actually get any negative vibe, but deep down you're already overwhelmed, right? You're already feeling, we should be many here, you know? So I started feeling like I need more of me. I need more of my kind here. So, and when Memorial University raised up the EDIAR group committee, I was like, oh, there is light in the tunnel, right? And I'm part of the committee, and I will say that it's awesome. And whenever I listen to people talk in the committee, I have this hope that someday it's going to be better. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be so sweet for people to be here. So, and I also get this kind of questions from people back home or people outside here, like, oh, I want my son, I want somebody to come to Memorial University. Tell me about Memorial University. Do you want my ward to be there or not? I was like, yeah, come. But then the next question might be, is it discriminatory? Is it going to be fine? I was like, yeah, it's going to be fine. And I'm actually saying it's going to be fine because I know it's going to be fine, right? Not that it's perfect now. Yeah. So I'm actually advocating, a very big advocate for equity, diversity, and inclusion in everything, because I think we have a lot to offer. Everybody has something to get to the table, no matter who you are, no matter your skin color or ethnicity or wherever you come from or your identity, you have something to offer. And I will really say Dr. Mullins is doing a wonderful job, and being in that committee alone and seeing ideas and other passionate people be there and talk what the future is like after the work is being done within 2 years, I'm really, really optimistic, and I think we're getting there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. And coming back, because you've made several references to you being an indigenous person. So have you been able to make contact with the indigenous peoples, the Inuit people here? Like, have you traveled to see their land? I'm just curious now.
Yeah, well, actually, part of my PhD was going over to Labrador, but because of COVID, I've not been able to go to Labrador physically, but I've been in contact with lots of them, and hopefully this summer, I'm going over to Labrador finally. So, and, but some other communities close to St. John's, I've been there trying to know what's happening in the local area. I'm actually a local person, so I like meeting these people and trying to link up and really find a home here, right? Okay. Because I've been here for this 3 years now. I actually feel this is my home now, so I have to really make it work. So yeah, I'm meeting a lot of people here, and it's interesting.
All right. And you've got so much to share when you meet people, like you shared with us.
Yes,
with
a
me
lot of
today.
people are actually fascinating when I tell them I'm studying about the Inuit. They're like, whoa, where are you from? That's the first question. So I was like, yeah, I'm actually indigenous, but I love the Inuit. Then when I tell them a lot about what I've read and what I'm doing with the Inuit, they were like, wow, we run to read your thesis.
Yes.
Yeah.
And add me to that number.
Thank you.
I can't wait. So what is your conversation like with another Inuit when you speak to that person? I mean, how are you, do you sort of have a spiritual vibe connection, or like tell me what that's like?
Well, actually, some of them I met in a conference actually don't speak in Inuktitut, but I try to like start with Nakumik, and then the person smiles. Then I'll switch to English and was like, I don't know how to speak this fluently, but I'm interested, and then the vibe starts. So just the greeting with indigenous language and then trying to connect with the spirits is, I think, is enough to strike the communication start. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, and then it just goes on
Yeah,
from there.
it just flows.
Oh, wow.
Then the ideas, then you start sharing a lot of stuff that you feel you're having connection with them, and they are really interested to know that, wow, we do this too. We do the prayers of the elders too. We communicate with their land. We are connected to our land. We had our own indigenous dressing and indigenous religion and our names, you know.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. I was surprised when I went to Nunavut in Kugluktuk to see the women carrying babies at their backs. It's the same way like we do, you know, at home.
There's
so
a
so
lot
much
we have in
connection.
common with
Yes,
these people.
yes,
A lot.
yes, right. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's great. So thank you so much for being here. Wow, we could talk and have this conversation for the rest of the day. But I'm really pleased that you're doing this work. It's very important work. Any work that's post-colonial in nature is important for us. And so thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. My pleasure always. Sharing Our Cultures will be right back. Thanks to Rita and to you for watching. Join us again next time for more remarkable stories from people from around the world who are making a significant contribution to Newfoundland and Labrador.